I ran to the ICU to find my husband. A nurse whispered, "Wait here." What happened next shocked me. Bethel receiving a frantic phone call in the middle of the night about her husband Mark William being rushed to the ICU after a mysterious accident. Heart pounding, she races through the rain-slick streets to the hospital, her mind flooded with fear and memories of their life together. Upon arrival, she bursts into the ICU hallway, only to be stopped by a nurse who whispers urgently, "Wait here," her face pale and eyes wide with unspoken horror. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe. It's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital burned into my retinas as I burst through the automatic doors, my heart hammering so violently I thought it might shatter my ribcage. The call had come 23 minutes ago. 23 minutes that felt like 23 lifetimes. "Mrs. Williams, your husband Mark has been admitted to the ICU. You need to come immediately." That was all they'd said.
No explanation.
No details. Just those cold, clinical words that turned my world into a spinning vortex of terror. My name is Ava Williams, and until 10:47 p.m. on that October evening, I thought I knew what fear felt like. I was wrong. Real fear isn't the jump scare from a horror movie or the nervousness before a job interview. Real fear is the nurse's trembling voice on the phone, the way she couldn't quite hide the urgency beneath her professional tone. Real fear is driving through red lights with your hands shaking so badly you can barely grip the steering wheel, praying to every god whose name you can remember that you'll make it in time to say goodbye. Or hello. Or anything at all. The hospital lobby was a blur of muted colors and antiseptic smells. My sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as I ran past the reception desk, ignoring the startled security guard who called after me. I knew where the ICU was. 3rd floor, East Wing. Mark and I had visited his father here 2 years ago, in those final days before cancer claimed him. I'd memorized every turn, every corridor, as if some part of me had known I'd need to find my way back in the dark. The elevator took an eternity. I watched the numbers climb, 1, 2, 3, each floor a small eternity. When the doors finally opened, I exploded into the hallway, my eyes frantically scanning for room numbers, for anyone who could tell me where my husband was. That's when I saw her. Nurse Bethel stood in the middle of the ICU corridor, her blue scrubs crisp and professional, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold, deep brown eyes that held something I couldn't quite name. Sympathy? Warning? Fear? She raised one hand, palm out, and her lips formed 2 words that would change everything. Wait here. To understand what happened next, you need to know about the 24 hours that came before. You need to know about the morning that started like any other morning, with coffee and toast and the comfortable silence of a marriage 7 years deep. Mark had been up before me, as usual. I'd found him in the kitchen, already dressed in his grey suit, the one that made his blue eyes look like pieces of sky. He was a financial analyst for Meridian Corp, a job that had him staring at spreadsheets and market trends for 10 hours a day. It wasn't his passion. That was reserved for the weekends, when he'd disappear into his workshop and emerge with hand-carved furniture that seemed to hold pieces of his soul. "Morning, beautiful," he'd said, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter toward me. He knew exactly how I took it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, heated for exactly 90 seconds in the microwave. "Morning yourself, handsome." I'd wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat seep into my fingers. October in Chicago meant the cold was already creeping in, that particular kind of cold that settles into your bones and doesn't leave until May. We'd talked about nothing and everything. His mother wanted us to visit for Thanksgiving. The dishwasher was making that weird grinding noise again. Did I remember to pay the electric bill? The mundane poetry of married life, the kind of conversation you don't appreciate until it's gone. "I've got that presentation today," Mark had said, checking his watch. The vintage Rolex his father had left him. The merger proposal. If it goes well, we might finally get that promotion. It'll go well, I'd assured him, straightening his tie. It was navy with thin silver stripes, sophisticated and understated, just like Mark. You've been preparing for weeks. You've got this. He'd kiss me then, soft and familiar, tasting like coffee and mint toothpaste. Love you, Ava. Love you more.
Impossible.
It was our ritual, the same exchange we'd had every morning since our honeymoon in Santorini. Looking back now, I wonder if some part of me knew to hold on to that moment a little longer, to press it into my memory like a flower between pages. Mark had left at 7:45 a.m. I'd watched from the kitchen window as he'd climbed into his silver Honda Accord, adjusting his rearview mirror before pulling out of our driveway. The autumn leaves were falling, coating our suburban street in shades of amber and rust. It had looked like a painting, one of those Norman Rockwell scenes of perfect American life. I'd gone to work myself shortly after. I was a second-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary, and my students were expecting me to continue our unit on butterflies and metamorphosis. There's something beautifully ironic about that now, teaching 7-year-olds about transformation on the day everything in my own life would transform beyond recognition. The day had been normal. Aggressively, almost mockingly normal.
Ide taugt fractions.
Helped little Sophie Martinez with her reading. Broken up a dispute over playground equipment during recess. At lunch, I'd sat in the teacher's lounge with my colleague Rachel, discussing her upcoming wedding and whether she should go with the lilac or the lavender bridesmaid dresses. What do you think, Ava? Lilac, right? Definitely lilac, I'd said, biting into my turkey sandwich. It'll photograph better. Normal. Everything was so perfectly, maddeningly normal. Mark had texted me at 2:17 p.m. Presentation went great. Boss was impressed. Celebration dinner tonight. My heart had swelled with pride. Absolutely. Your choice of restaurant. So proud of you. Red Heart. How about Giuseppe's? 7:30. Perfect. Love you. Love you more.
Impossible.
Even over text, we maintained our ritual. Giuseppe's was our special occasion place, a small Italian restaurant tucked into a corner of downtown where the pasta was handmade and the owner, Giuseppe himself, remembered your name after one visit. We'd gone there for our first anniversary, and it had become our tradition for celebrating good news. I'd left school at 4 p.m., my mind already planning what I'd wear. The blue dress, maybe, the one Mark said brought out the green flecks in my hazel eyes. I'd stopped at home to change and freshen up, humming to myself as I touched up my makeup. The house had felt peaceful, filled with the golden light of late afternoon. Everything was in its place. Mark's reading glasses on the coffee table, my lesson plans spread across the dining room, the photos on our walls chronicling our journey from college sweethearts to married couple. Us at graduation. Us at Rachel's birthday party last year. Us on our wedding day, young and radiant and so certain that love was enough. I'd left for the restaurant at 7 p.m., wanting to get there a little early, maybe order a bottle of wine. The drive downtown had been smooth, traffic light for a Friday evening. I'd found parking just half a block from Giuseppe's, a small miracle in Chicago. At 7:25 p.m., I'd walked into the restaurant, breathing in the scent of garlic and oregano, already smiling at the thought of Mark's face when I surprised him by ordering his favorite Chianti without being asked. Reservation for Williams, I'd told the hostess, a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. Right this way, She'd led me to a corner booth, intimate and warm, with a flickering candle in a wine bottle. I'd slid into the seat, checking my phone. 7:28 p.m. Mark would be here any minute. He was never late. 7:30 p.m. came and went. At 7:35 p.m., I texted him, I'm here. Where are you? The message showed as delivered but not read. 7:45 p.m. Mark? Everything okay? Still delivered. Still not read. By 8 p.m., a cold tendril of worry had begun snaking through my chest. This wasn't like Mark. He was punctual to a fault, One of those people who set their watch 5 minutes fast just to make sure they were never late. I'd called him. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Hey, you've reached Mark Williams. Can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back. Mark, it's me. Where are you? I'm getting worried. Call me as soon as you get this. Giuseppe himself had come by, concern etched into his weathered face. Mrs. Williams, can I get you started with something while you wait? Just water, please. I'm sure he'll be here soon. But I wasn't sure. Not anymore. At 8:15 p.m., I'd called Mark's office. No answer. Of course not. It was Friday evening. Everyone had gone home. At 8:30 p.m., I'd called his best friend, James. Hey, Ava. What's up? Have you heard from Mark today? Yeah, he texted this afternoon about that big presentation. Said it went well. Why? He's not answering his phone. We were supposed to meet for dinner an hour ago. A pause. That's weird. Mark's never late. Have you tried? I've tried everything. His phone's going straight to voicemail now. Okay, don't panic. Maybe his battery died. You know how he always forgets to charge it. It was true. Mark was terrible about keeping his phone charged. But something in my gut told me this was different. At 9 p.m., I'd left the restaurant, apologizing to Giuseppe, promising to pay for the held reservation. He'd waved me off with grandfatherly concern. Go find your husband, Mrs. Williams. I hope everything is okay. I'd driven home with my heart in my throat, half expecting to find Mark there, sheepish and apologetic, with some reasonable explanation. Car trouble. Lost phone. Work emergency that kept him late. The house was dark and empty. I'd called his mother. Mary, it's Ava. Is Mark with you?
No, dear.
Why would he be? Is everything all right? I don't know. We were supposed to meet for dinner, and he didn't show up. He's not answering his phone. Oh my. Mary's voice had tightened with mother's intuition. That's not like him at all. I know. Have you called the hospitals? The word had hit me like a physical blow. Hospitals. The possibility I'd been dancing around for the past 2 hours suddenly crystallized into stark reality. I'll call them now, I'd said, my voice barely steady. I'll let you know when I find him. Ava, honey, I'm sure he's fine. Probably just a misunderstanding. But we both knew she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I'd started with the closest hospital, Memorial, just 15 minutes from downtown. The emergency room receptionist had put me on hold for what felt like hours. Mum? We do have a Mark Williams admitted this evening. The floor had dropped out from under me. What? When? What happened? Is he okay? I'm not authorized to give out patient information over the phone, but given that you're his spouse, I can tell you he's in the ICU. You should come immediately. ICU? What? Why is he in the ICU? What happened to him? You really need to speak with the doctors. How soon can you get here? I'd already been grabbing my keys, my purse, not even bothering to turn off the lights. I'm coming now. I'm coming right now. And that's how I'd ended up here, in this corridor, staring at Nurse Bethel as she held up her hand and whispered those 2 impossible words. Wait here. Wait here. I echoed, my voice rising to a pitch I didn't recognize. Wait here. That's my husband in there. I need to see him. I need to know what happened. I need. Nurse Bethel moved quickly, closing the distance between us and placing a firm but gentle hand on my arm. Her touch was warm, grounding me when I felt like I might fly apart into a million pieces. Mrs. Williams, she said quietly, her voice low enough that other people in the corridor wouldn't hear. I understand you're frightened, but I need you to trust me right now. There are things happening in that room that you're not prepared to see. Not yet. Things? What things? Is Mark dying? Oh God, Is he dying? The words ripped out of me, raw and jagged. A passing doctor glanced our way, his expression professionally neutral, before continuing down the hall. He's not dying, Bethel said firmly. But the situation is complicated. Dr. Martinez is with him now, and she'll come speak with you shortly. But you need to prepare yourself, Ava. Can I call you Ava? I nodded numbly, too overwhelmed to insist on formality. Ava, I need you to sit down. She gestured to a row of plastic chairs along the wall, the kind of uncomfortable seating that seemed specifically designed to make waiting even more unbearable. Can you do that for me? I don't want to sit. I want to see my husband. I know you do. And you will. I promise you will. But first, I need to ask you some questions. Important questions. Can you sit down? Please. There was something in her tone, something that told me this wasn't a suggestion or a power play. This was a nurse who had seen things, who knew things, who was trying to help me in ways I didn't yet understand. I sat. The plastic chair was cold against the back of my legs. I was still wearing the blue dress, I realized distantly. The one I'd put on for a celebration dinner that never happened. My feet hurt from running in heels. Bethel pulled over another chair and sat facing me, our knees almost touching. She pulled out a tablet, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. When did you last speak with your husband? This afternoon. Around 2:30. He texted me about his presentation at work. It went well. He was happy. We were supposed to meet for dinner to celebrate. And he didn't show up for dinner.
No.
I waited for over an hour. Then I called everywhere, and finally the hospital told me he was here. My voice cracked. No one will tell me what happened. No one will tell me anything. Has Mark been sick recently? Any complaints of pain, dizziness, shortness of breath? No, nothing. He's been fine. He's been perfectly healthy. He had a physical 2 months ago and the doctor said everything was great. Why? What's wrong with him? Bethel's fingers continued their dance across the tablet screen. Has he been under unusual stress lately? Work pressure, financial problems, family issues? Just normal work stress. Nothing unusual. He's been excited about this promotion. Why are you asking me these questions? Please, just tell me what's wrong with him. She looked up from the tablet, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, an emotion I couldn't quite place. Pity? Concern? Something else? Mrs. Williams, Ava, I'm going to tell you what I know, which admittedly isn't everything. Mark was brought in by ambulance at approximately 8:45 p.m. He was found unconscious in his car in the parking garage at Meridian Corporation. A security guard discovered him during routine rounds and called 911. Unconscious. The word echoed in my skull. Mark had been unconscious, alone in a parking garage, while I'd been sitting in a restaurant checking my phone and getting annoyed that he was late. What happened? Did he have a heart attack? A stroke? Was there an accident? The preliminary assessment suggests some kind of neurological event, but we are still running tests. His vital signs were unstable when he arrived, but the team has managed to stabilize him. He's intubated right now. That means he has a breathing tube, and is sedated while we figure out exactly what's going on. Intubated. Sedated. The medical terminology washed over me like ice water. Can I see him? Please, I just need to see him. I need to know he's okay. Soon, Bethel promised. But Ava, I need you to prepare yourself. He doesn't look like himself right now. There are tubes and wires and machines. It can be frightening, even when you know what to expect. I don't care. He's my husband. I need to be with him. Before Bethel could respond, a door down the corridor opened and a woman in a white coat emerged. She was in her early 40s, with black hair streaked with silver and sharp, intelligent eyes behind frameless glasses. She moved with the kind of confidence that comes from years of life or death decisions. Mrs. Williams, she called, spotting me immediately. I jumped to my feet, my legs unsteady beneath me. Yes. Yes, I'm Ava Williams. Is Mark okay? Can I see him? The doctor extended her hand. I'm Dr. Elena Martinez, head of neurology. Please, let's step into the consultation room where we can talk privately. I don't want to talk. I want to see my husband. Dr. Martinez's expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of sympathy cross her face. I understand, Mrs. Williams, and you will see him very shortly. But first, we need to discuss his condition. It's important that you understand what's happening before you go in there. Nurse Bethel, please join us. I wanted to argue, to insist, to scream that I didn't need their explanations or their private consultation rooms. But something in Dr. Martinez's tone told me this was non-negotiable. Whatever she had to say, I needed to sit down to hear it. The consultation room was small and impersonal, with cream-colored walls and a print of a serene beach scene that was probably meant to be calming but felt like an insult. How dare they hang images of peaceful beaches when my world was crumbling? Dr. Martinez gestured to a chair. Sit. Bethel stood by the door, her presence somehow comforting. Mrs. Williams, your husband experienced what we call a cryptogenic stroke. Stroke. The word hung in the air between us like a curse. He's 34 years old, I said numbly. How can he have a stroke? He doesn't smoke. He exercises. His cholesterol is fine. Cryptogenic means we don't yet know the cause, Dr. Martinez explained, her voice professional but not unkind. In younger patients, strokes can be triggered by various factors, underlying heart conditions, blood clotting disorders, even some genetic factors. We are running comprehensive tests to determine the exact cause. Is he going to be okay? Is he going to die? The next 72 hours are critical. It's standard protocol when we find evidence of potential poisoning. Detective Ramirez will want to speak with you, but we wanted to inform you first. I couldn't breathe. The consultation room was closing in on me, the walls pressing closer with each passing second. Mark was in the ICU with a stroke. He'd been poisoned. He'd asked them not to tell me something. None of this made sense. None of this could be real. I need to see him, I said, standing abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor with a sound like nails on a chalkboard. Right now. I need to see my husband right now. Dr. Martinez and Bethel exchanged another look. All right, the doctor said finally. But remember what I said about preparing yourself. He looks different. The intubation tube, the wires, the machines, it's a lot to take in. I don't care. I need to see him. Bethel led me down the corridor, past rooms with partially open doors through which I caught glimpses of other people's tragedies. An elderly woman asleep with an oxygen mask, a middle-aged man with his leg in a complex traction system, a young person I couldn't quite see but whose family huddled in the corner, crying softly. The ICU was a place of muted sounds and bright lights, where the steady beep of monitors provided a soundtrack of fragile lives held together by medicine and machines. The smell was overwhelming, that particular combination of antiseptic, illness, and something else I couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe. Death's proximity. We stopped outside room 307. Through the glass window, I could see a figure on the bed, but from this angle, I couldn't make out details. Ready? Bethel asked softly. I wasn't. I would never be ready. But I nodded anyway. She pushed open the door. The man on the bed didn't look like Mark. That was my first thought, shocking in its clarity. This person was the right size, the right shape, but he'd been transformed into something else, a sci-fi hybrid of man and machine, with tubes snaking from his mouth and nose, wires connecting him to banks of monitors that beeped and hummed and traced the architecture of his failing body in lines of green and red light. But it was Mark. I recognized his hands, those long fingers that could coax music from a guitar and magic from pieces of wood. I recognized the small scar on his left forearm from a teenage bicycle accident. I recognized the wedding ring on his finger, the simple gold band we'd chosen together in a small jewelry shop in Vermont. Oh God, I breathed, moving to his bedside. Mark, I'm here. His eyes were closed, his face slack with sedation. A ventilator breathed for him with mechanical precision, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that wasn't quite human. I reached for his hand, closing my fingers around his. His skin was warm, which surprised me. I'd expected him to be cold, like he was already slipping away. "Can he hear me?" I asked Bethel, who had positioned herself discreetly near the door. "We don't know for certain. Some studies suggest that unconscious patients can process auditory information on some level. It can't hurt to talk to him." So I talked. I told him about my day, about Sophie Martinez finally reading an entire paragraph without help, about Rachel's bridesmaid dress dilemma. At some point, Dr. Martinez returned to tell me they were moving Mark for an MRI scan to get a better picture of the stroke damage. I would need to leave the room during the procedure. At some point, I realized I'd been crying, tears streaming down my face without my awareness, dripping onto our joined hands. And at some point, Bethel came back and gently touched my shoulder. "Ava, there's someone here who needs to speak with you. Detective Ramirez. Are you ready to talk to her?" I wasn't ready for anything, but I nodded, kissing Mark's hand before reluctantly letting go. "I'll be right outside," I told him. "I'm not leaving you. I promise I'm not leaving you." The detective was waiting in a small office off the main ICU corridor. She was in her 50s, with iron-grey haircut in a no-nonsense bob and eyes that had clearly seen too much of humanity's dark side. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Detective Rosa Ramirez. I know this is a difficult time, but I need to ask you some questions about your husband's activities in the hours before he was admitted." I sank into the chair across from her, exhaustion crashing over me in waves. "You think someone tried to kill him? We are exploring all possibilities. Can you walk me through your husband's day, as far as you know it?" So I did. I recounted the morning, the presentation, the texts, the dinner that never happened. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from somewhere outside my body. Detective Ramirez took notes on a battered notebook, her expression neutral. "This presentation your husband gave, do you know who attended?"
No.
He didn't mention names. Just that it went well and his boss was impressed. "And you said he works at Meridian Corp?" "Yes, he's a senior financial analyst. Has been for 4 years." "Has he mentioned any conflicts at work? Disagreements with colleagues, disputes over projects, anything like that?"
No.
"Mark gets along with everyone. He's not the type to make enemies." But even as I said it, I wondered, how much did I really know about Mark's work life? He came home, we talked about our days in broad strokes, but did I know the details? Did I know his office politics, his rivalries, his ambitions? What about financial problems? Debt, gambling, anything that might put him under pressure? No, nothing like that. We are comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. We pay our bills, we have savings. Mark's careful with money. Has he seemed stressed lately? Anxious? Behaving differently? I thought about it, really thought about it. Had Mark been different? Had there been signs I'd missed? "He's been excited about this promotion," I said slowly. "Maybe a little more tense than usual in the last few weeks. But nothing alarming. Nothing that would make me think." I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Detective Ramirez leaned forward. "Mrs. Williams, I have to ask you this, and I know it's difficult. Is there any possibility your husband was having an affair?" The question hit me like a slap. What? No. Absolutely not. Mark would never. We have a good marriage. We are happy. You're certain? Yes, I'm certain. Why would you even ask that? Because aconite poisoning is rare, and when it does occur, it's usually in the context of a romantic relationship. Jealous lover, angry ex, sometimes even a spouse. The implication hung in the air between us. "You think I poisoned my husband?" I asked, my voice rising. "Are you seriously suggesting that I tried to kill Mark?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Mrs. Williams. I'm simply exploring possibilities. Can you account for your whereabouts today between noon and 8 p.m.? I was at work until 4 o'clock. I teach second grade at Riverside Elementary. There are 30 witnesses who can confirm that. Then I went home, changed, and went to Giuseppe's restaurant to meet Mark for dinner. I was there from 7:25 until 9 o'clock, waiting for him. Giuseppe and his entire staff can confirm that. And you had no contact with your husband during that time besides the text messages?
No.
I told you, we were texting about dinner plans, and then he stopped responding. Detective Ramirez made another note. Did your husband have any enemies that you're aware of? Anyone who might want to harm him?
No.
Everyone likes Mark. He's a good man. He's kind and honest and he doesn't deserve this. My voice broke on the last word, and suddenly I was crying again, great heaving sobs that I couldn't control. Bethel appeared with a box of tissues, pressing them into my hand with a gentleness that made me cry harder. I think that's enough for now, she said firmly to Detective Ramirez. Mrs. Williams has been through a traumatic evening. Any other questions can wait. To my surprise, the detective nodded. You're right. Mrs. Williams, I'll need to speak with you again, but for now, I have enough. I'm sorry for the difficult questions. I hope your husband recovers. She left, and I was alone with Bethel and my shattered composure. I didn't poison him, I said between sobs. I would never hurt Mark. I love him. I know, Bethel said softly. The detective is just doing her job. No one seriously suspects you. But I wondered if that was true. I'd watched enough crime shows to know that the spouse is always the first suspect. Come on, Bethel continued, helping me to my feet. Let's get you some coffee. You need to eat something too. When's the last time you had food? I couldn't remember. Lunch. That sandwich in the teacher's lounge, which felt like it had happened in another lifetime. I'm not hungry. I know, but you need to keep your strength up. You're no good to Mark if you collapse from exhaustion. She led me to a small break room with vending machines and a coffee maker that looked like it had survived several wars. The coffee was terrible, burnt and bitter, but it was hot, and I wrapped my hands around the styrofoam cup, letting the heat anchor me to reality. Bethel sat across from me, not speaking, just present. It was a kindness I didn't know I needed. What did he mean? I finally asked. When he said, "Don't let Ava know." What was he trying to hide from me? Bethel's expression was unreadable. I don't know. But Ava, in my 15 years as an ICU nurse, I've learned that people carry secrets for all kinds of reasons. Some are protecting themselves. Some are protecting the people they love. And sometimes, what seems like a secret is just fear speaking. Fear of what? Fear of being a burden. Fear of changing how someone sees them. Fear of losing control. She paused. Your husband had a stroke. He was probably terrified and confused. Whatever he said in that moment, it might not even reflect what he truly wants. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had taken root in my chest, growing like a poisonous vine. The next 36 hours existed in a blur of fluorescent lights and mechanical beeps. I refused to leave the hospital. Bethel brought me a blanket and a pillow, and I curled up in the chair beside Mark's bed, my hand never leaving his. Mark's mother, Mary, arrived at dawn the next morning, her face drawn and pale. She'd driven through the night from Springfield, and her hand shook as she approached her son's bedside. "Oh, Mark," she whispered, touching his face with trembling fingers. "My baby boy." We sat together in silence, two women united by love for the same man, helpless against the medical crisis that had claimed him. Dr. Martinez ran more tests. The MRI showed significant damage to the left hemisphere, but she remained cautiously optimistic. The brain is remarkably plastic, she told us. It can sometimes reroute functions around damaged areas. We won't know the full extent until he wakes up. Detective Ramirez returned with more questions. She'd interviewed Mark's colleagues at Meridian Corporation. The presentation had indeed gone well. Mark had left the office at 6:30 p.m. saying he was meeting me for dinner. Security footage showed him walking to his car, alone, carrying his briefcase. He'd sat in the driver's seat for approximately 15 minutes before slumping over the wheel. Did anyone visit him during those 15 minutes? I asked.
No.
But Mrs. Williams, I need to show you something. She pulled out a phone, displaying a photograph of a small vial. This was found in your husband's car, tucked into the center console. Do you recognize it? I peered at the image. It was a glass vial, no larger than my thumb, with a handwritten label that simply said MW. Mark's initials.
No.
I've never seen that before. The lab confirms it contained a concentrated solution of aconite, the same toxin found in your husband's blood work. My mind reeled. Are you saying Mark poisoned himself? I'm saying he had the poison in his possession. Whether he took it intentionally, or whether someone planted it there to frame him, we don't yet know. Mark wouldn't kill himself. He was happy. We were planning for the future. He had no reason. Sometimes people hide their struggles very well, Detective Ramirez said gently. Has your husband ever shown signs of depression? Talked about feeling hopeless? No, I insisted, but my certainty was crumbling. Had there been signs? Late nights when he claimed to be working but came home with red eyes? Moments when he'd stare into space, lost in thoughts he wouldn't share. We are checking his phone records, his computer, his email. If there's something to find, we'll find it. After she left, I returned to Mark's side, studying his face as if I could read the answers written in his features. What were you hiding from me? I whispered. What secret was worth poisoning yourself over? The machines beeped their steady rhythm, offering no answers. On the afternoon of the second day, Dr. Martinez made the decision to begin reducing Mark's sedation. We need to assess his neurological function, she explained. The longer we keep him sedated, the harder it becomes to gauge his recovery. I sat beside his bed, gripping his hand so tightly my knuckles turned white, as the medical team adjusted his medications. They warned me it might take hours for him to surface, that the process would be gradual. But Mark had always been contrary. 30 minutes after they reduced the sedation, his fingers twitched in mine. My heart leaped. Mark, honey, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered. The ventilator continued its steady rhythm, but I saw awareness creeping back into his face, the subtle shift from absence to presence. His oxygen saturation is good, Dr. Martinez said, checking the monitors. We are going to extubate him. Ava, you might want to step back. This can be uncomfortable to watch. I moved to the corner of the room, my heart hammering as the medical team surrounded Mark's bed. The extraction of the breathing tube was quick but violent looking, and Mark immediately began coughing, his body convulsing with the effort. Easy, Mr. Williams, Dr. Martinez soothed, adjusting his oxygen mask. Just breathe. You're doing great. Mark's eyes opened fully, blinking against the harsh lights. They roamed the room, unfocused and confused, until they landed on me. I saw recognition dawn in his face. And then, unmistakably, I saw fear. Ava, he rasped, his voice destroyed by the intubation. No. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be here. The words pierced me like daggers. Mark, I'm your wife. Of course I'm here. You're in the hospital. You've had a stroke, but you're going to be okay. He turned his head away from me, his expression anguished. You need to leave. Please. Please, Ava, just go. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Mr. Williams, your wife has been here for 2 days. She's been incredibly worried about you. Can you tell us why you don't want her here? Because she'll hate me, Mark whispered, and a tear slid down his cheek. When she knows the truth, she'll hate me. I moved back to his bedside, ignoring his attempt to pull his hand away. Mark, I could never hate you. Whatever's happening, whatever you're dealing with, we'll face it together. That's what marriage means. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. Ava, I've ruined everything. I've destroyed our entire life, and I can't. I can't watch you realize what I've done. What have you done? I asked, my voice steady even though my world was tilting. Tell me. Whatever it is, just tell me. He closed his eyes, fresh tears streaming down his face. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear him, he said, I embezzled $3 million from Meridian Corporation. The room went silent except for the beeping of monitors. I stared at my husband, unable to process what he'd just said. You, what? $3 million, Mark repeated, his voice stronger now, as if saying it aloud had broken some dam inside him. Over the past 18 months, I've been moving money through false accounts, covering my tracks with fake invoices and phantom vendors. And 2 days ago, I found out the company was doing an internal audit. They were going to find everything. I felt like I was falling, tumbling through space with nothing to catch me. Why? Mark, why would you do that? We don't need money. We are fine. We are. My father's debts, he interrupted. When he died, he left debts I didn't know about. Gambling debts. To very dangerous people. They came to me 6 months after the funeral, said I'd inherited his obligations. $2 million, Ava. They said if I didn't pay, they'd hurt you. They'd hurt my mother. They showed me pictures of you at school, of Mom at the grocery store. They knew everything about us. The world snapped back into focus, each detail razor-sharp. You were being threatened? Why didn't you tell me? We could have gone to the police. These aren't the kind of people you go to the police about. And I was ashamed. Ashamed of my father for leaving this mess. Ashamed that I couldn't protect you without becoming a criminal myself. So I started taking money from the company. Just a little at first, enough to make the payments. But then they wanted more. They always wanted more. And suddenly I was in too deep to climb out. Dr. Martinez had discreetly stepped back, giving us privacy. Bethel stood by the door, her expression sad but not surprised. She'd probably heard similar confessions countless times. The aconite, I said slowly, piecing it together. You were going to kill yourself. Mark nodded miserably. I couldn't face prison. Couldn't watch you testify at my trial. Couldn't make you visit me behind glass for the next 20 years. I thought if I was gone, you could move on. Remarry. Have the life you deserve. The insurance would pay out. You'd be taken care of. You stupid, stupid man, I said, my voice shaking with a combination of anger and relief and heartbreak. You think I'd rather have insurance money than have you? You think I'd rather be a widow than help you through a crisis? Ava, I'm going to prison. The audit will find the money. It's over. So we'll deal with that. We'll get you a lawyer. We'll cooperate with the investigation. We'll figure out these criminals who were threatening you. But you don't get to make the decision to leave me. That's not how marriage works. I thought I was protecting you. By lying to me. By keeping secrets. By trying to kill yourself and leave me wondering for the rest of my life what I did wrong. My voice rose, 2 days of fear and confusion finally finding release in anger. Mark, I stood in this hospital not knowing if you'd live or die. Do you have any idea what that's like? And now you're telling me you chose that? You chose to put me through that. I'm sorry, he sobbed. God, Ava, I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to rage at him for his secrets, his cowardice, his decision to shoulder this burden alone rather than trust in the strength of our partnership. But looking at him, broken and ashamed and still recovering from a self-inflicted near-death, I couldn't sustain the anger. The stroke, Dr. Martinez interjected quietly. The aconite can cause stroke-like symptoms as the body fights the toxin. Combined with stress and the actual toxin, your brain short-circuited. In a way, Mr. Williams, your body's defense mechanism saved your life by incapacitating you before the poison could finish its work. The security guard who found you, I said. He saved your life. And you're going to use that second chance. Not to run away, not to take the easy way out, but to face what you've done and make it right. How? Mark asked. How do I make any of this right? One day at a time. One truth at a time. Starting right now, no more secrets. No more lies. We face everything together, or we don't face it at all. Detective Ramirez returned that evening, and this time Mark told her everything. The embezzlement. The threats. The names of the men who'd claimed his father's debts. Names that made the detective's eyes narrow with recognition. The Volkov organization, she said grimly. Russian mob operating out of the South Side. Your father was in deep with them, Mr. Williams. They've been on our radar for years, but they're careful. Very careful. I can testify, Mark said. I have records of every payment I made to them. Dates, amounts, locations. I kept everything, thinking maybe someday I'd have the courage to use it. That's incredibly dangerous, Ramirez warned. These people don't forgive cooperation. I know, but Ava's right. I can't run from this anymore. The detective looked at me. Mrs. Williams, you understand what this means? If your husband testifies against the Volkovs, you'll both need protection. Possibly witness protection, depending on how the case develops. The implications crashed over me. Leaving our home. New identities. Losing everything familiar and safe. But I'd already faced losing Mark. Everything else was negotiable. We'll do whatever we need to do, I said firmly. Over the next week, as Mark recovered in the hospital, the investigation unfolded with startling speed. Mark's cooperation led federal agents to key members of the Volkov organization. The evidence he'd collected, combined with the Bureau's existing intelligence, resulted in a coordinated raid that netted 17 arrests. Meridian Corp, learning of the circumstances behind Mark's embezzlement, agreed to a restitution deal rather than pressing charges. Mark would repay what he'd stolen over time, would lose his job, but would avoid prison. It wasn't a happy ending. Those don't exist outside of fairy tales. But it was a chance, a second chance purchased at enormous cost. 3 weeks after that terrible night, I sat in Mark's hospital room as Dr. Martinez delivered her final assessment. You've made remarkable progress, Mr. Williams. The stroke did cause some damage. You'll need speech therapy and physical therapy for several months. Your right side will always be slightly weaker. But you're young, and with work, you should regain most of your function. Mark nodded, squeezing my hand. His grip was still weak on the right side, but it was there. He was there. When can he come home? I asked. Tomorrow, if you're ready. He'll need extensive outpatient care, and someone will need to be with him initially. Can you arrange that? I'm taking a leave of absence from teaching, I said. I'll be with him. After Dr. Martinez left, Mark and I sat in silence for a moment. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. We'd learned to sit with difficult truths, to let them exist without trying to explain them away. I should give you an out, Mark finally said. This isn't what you signed up for. A husband with criminal debts, possible witness protection, permanent disability. You deserve better, Ava. Stop telling me what I deserve, I said, but gently. I deserve a husband who trusts me enough to share his burdens. I deserve a partner who understands that marriage means facing the darkness together, not trying to shield each other from it. And yes, I deserve a husband who will never, ever try to kill himself again, no matter how impossible things seem. I promise, Mark said, and I believed him. Besides, I continued, trying to lighten the moment, who else is going to put up with your terrible habit of leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor? He laughed, a broken sound that was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in weeks. The small apartment in Portland, Oregon, wasn't home. Not really. Home was Chicago, our house with the leaky dishwasher and the bedroom that caught the morning sun. But witness protection meant leaving home behind, at least for now. The U.S. Marshals had set us up with new identities. Mark was now Michael Wright, and I was Emma. We'd kept our first initials to make the transition easier, and Mary had been relocated to a senior community in Nevada under her own new identity. Mark, Michael, worked at a hardware store, a far cry from financial analysis but honest work that let him sleep at night. I'd found a position at a local elementary school. The students didn't know their teacher's real name, but they knew she loved butterflies and metamorphosis, and that was enough. Mark's physical therapy had progressed well. He'd regained most of his mobility, though his right hand trembled when he was tired. He'd started carving again, simple projects at first, but gradually more complex. The workshop was a corner of our small garage, but he made it work. We'd learned to build a new life from the ashes of the old one. It wasn't the life we'd planned, but it was ours. One Saturday morning, 9 months after that terrible night in the ICU, I woke to find Mark sitting on the edge of our bed, holding something small in his hands. "What's that?" I asked, sitting up. He turned to me, and his eyes were wet with tears. "I carved it for you. An apology that's 9 months too late, but still." He handed me a wooden butterfly, no larger than my palm. The detail was exquisite, each wing perfectly symmetrical, the body delicately tapered. It was made from maple, the grain creating natural patterns that looked almost like the markings on a real butterfly. "Mark." I breathed. "Michael," he corrected gently, and we both smiled at the absurdity of it. "It's beautiful." "It's a monarch," he said. "They migrate thousands of miles, right? They transform completely, die and are reborn, and somehow they find their way home even though they've never been there before. I thought maybe we're like that, finding our way to a new home, transformed by what we've been through." I set the butterfly carefully on the nightstand and pulled him close. "We'll find our way," I promised. "Together." "Together," he echoed. Detective Ramirez, now retired, sent us a letter a few weeks later. The Volkov trial had concluded. 17 members of the organization had been convicted, with sentences ranging from 10 to 40 years. The network had been dismantled. "Thanks to your husband's testimony," she wrote, "we estimate you've saved at least a dozen other families from the same fate you faced. His father's debts are paid, not with money, but with justice. You can both be proud of that." The letter included a phone number. "When you're ready to reclaim your real names and real lives, call this number. It'll be safe soon. Maybe a year, maybe 2. But you'll go home eventually." I showed Mark the letter as we sat on our small balcony, watching the Portland sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Home," he said softly. I almost forgot what that word meant. "Home isn't a place," I told him, repeating something Bethel had said to me during one of those long hospital nights. "It's the people you refuse to abandon, even when everything falls apart." Mark took my hand, and this time his grip was strong. "I'm glad you didn't abandon me, even when I gave you every reason to." "I made a promise," I said simply. 7 years ago, in front of everyone we loved. For better or worse. I meant it. The truth about that night. On the anniversary of Mark's stroke, we drove to a quiet beach outside Portland. The Oregon coast was wild and beautiful, so different from the flat Midwestern landscape we'd known. We walked along the sand, our feet leaving temporary prints that the tide would soon erase. Mark had been quiet all morning, and I knew he was thinking about that night, the night everything changed. "I want to tell you something," he finally said, stopping to face the ocean. Something I couldn't say before, when everything was fresh and raw. "Okay." That night in the parking garage, when I took the poison, I was terrified. Obviously. But in those last conscious moments, before the stroke hit, I thought about you. About the life we'd built together. And I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't want to die, Ava. I wanted to live. I wanted to fight for us, for our marriage, for our future. Even if it meant prison, even if it meant losing everything material we'd built. I wanted to live because life with you, in whatever form it took, was better than death without you." "Then why did you take the poison in the first place?" "Because I was a coward. Because I thought I was protecting you, when really I was just avoiding the consequences of my own choices. But in those final moments, I understood. You can't protect someone by abandoning them. Love isn't about shielding people from pain. It's about standing together through the pain and finding your way out the other side. I wrapped my arms around him, and we stood there on the beach as the waves crashed around us, two people who'd been broken and were slowly learning to be whole again. When we returned to our apartment, there was an envelope tucked under our door. No stamp, no return address. Just our fake names written in elegant script. Mark opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a cashier's check for $3.2 million. The letter read, "Michael and Emma, you don't know me, but I knew Mark's father. He and I served together in the army, back before life got complicated. I heard about his gambling debts, about what happened to his son. I heard about the testimony that brought down the Volkovs. What you don't know is that your father-in-law was working for the FBI for the last 6 months of his life. He was helping build a case against the Volkovs when cancer took him. His gambling debts were part of his cover, a way to get close to their operation. But he died before he could finish the job, and the Bureau couldn't tell you the truth without compromising ongoing investigations. Mark finished what his father started, whether he knew it or not. That takes courage. The enclosed check represents your father-in-law's military pension, hazard pay from his FBI work, and compensation from the Bureau for what your family endured. It's not enough. No amount of money could be enough, but it's yours. Use it to pay back Meridian Corporation. Use it to start fresh. Use it to build the life your father-in-law wanted for you." He was proud of Mark. He would be even prouder now. A friend. We stood in our tiny apartment, holding a check that represented our freedom, and cried. For Mark's father, who died carrying secrets meant to protect his family. For the year we'd lost to fear and isolation. For the innocence we'd never get back. But also for the future that suddenly, impossibly, lay open before us. The house in Chicago was smaller than our old one, but it had character. Mark's workshop took up half the basement, and the smell of sawdust and varnish had become my favorite perfume. I was back at Riverside Elementary, teaching 2nd grade. Sophie Martinez was now in 8th grade, but she still stopped by sometimes to say hello. Mark had opened his own small woodworking business, creating custom furniture for clients across the Midwest. His right hand still trembled sometimes, but he'd learned to work with it, to let the imperfection become part of his art. We'd paid back Meridian Corp in full. We'd rebuilt our credit, our reputation, our lives. Mary lived 20 minutes away, in a cheerful senior apartment complex where she played bridge every Thursday and scandalized the other residents with her youthful spirit. But the most important thing, the thing that made everything else possible, was that we'd rebuilt trust. Not the naive trust of people who'd never been tested, but the deep, unshakable trust of two people who'd seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay anyway. We'd started a tradition on the anniversary of Mark's stroke. We'd go to Giuseppe's for dinner, the same restaurant where I'd waited that terrible night. Giuseppe always seated us at the same corner booth, and he always sent over a bottle of Chianti, on the house. To second chances, Mark would say, raising his glass. To truth, I'd counter. To us, we'd finish together. The scar tissue in Mark's brain never fully healed. He had occasional migraines, and stress could bring on seizures, so he took medication and managed his condition carefully. Some people might see that as a tragedy, a permanent reminder of his darkest moment. But I saw it differently. That scar tissue was proof that he'd survived. That we'd survived. Every challenge, Mark's physical therapy, the witness protection, the financial struggle to rebuild, had tested us. And every time, we'd chosen each other. We'd chosen honesty over comfort, partnership over protection, hope over despair. The butterfly Mark had carved for me sat on our mantel now, a reminder that transformation is painful but necessary, that sometimes you have to completely break down before you can rebuild into something stronger. 7 years after that night in the ICU, on a Sunday morning in October, I woke to find Mark already up. I could hear him moving around in the kitchen, the smell of coffee drifting upstairs. I pulled on a robe and padded downstairs to find him standing by the window, looking out at the backyard where leaves were beginning to fall. "Hey," I said softly, wrapping my arms around him from behind. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep. Was thinking about that night. 7 years ago. I think about it too, I admitted. Sometimes I still have nightmares about getting that phone call, running through the hospital, not knowing if you were alive or dead. He turned to face me, taking my hands in his. Ava, I need to tell you something. My heart clenched. Even after all these years, those words still triggered a flash of fear. I've been talking to a publisher, Mark continued, about writing a book, about what happened to us, the embezzlement, the suicide attempt, the recovery, all of it. They think it could help other people who are dealing with secrets and shame and feeling like there's no way out. With gratitude, Mark and Ava Williams. Bethel hung the butterfly in her kitchen window, where the morning light could shine through the delicate maple grain. And every time she looked at it, she remembered why she'd chosen nursing in the first place, not for the dramatic saves or the grateful families, but for the quiet moments when a few words, a gentle touch, or a simple request to wait here could change the entire trajectory of someone's life. That's what healing really is, she thought. Not just fixing what's broken, but giving people the strength and space to fix themselves. And in the end, that's what we all need. Someone to tell us to wait, to breathe, to trust that we are strong enough to face whatever comes next. Someone to believe in our survival before we can believe in it ourselves. Someone to stand guard at the door of our darkest moments and say, not yet. Prepare yourself. Gather your strength. You're going to need it. And then, when we are ready, when we are as ready as we'll ever be, someone to open that door and walk beside us into the storm. That's love. That's healing. That's the impossible made possible, one patient, one crisis, one whispered instruction at a time. Wait here. And then, when you're ready, step forward. Face it. Survive it. Transform. Emotional journey. Fear. Betrayal. Forgiveness. Healing. Transformation. The story explores themes of secrets in marriage, the cost of protection versus honesty, survival, and redemption. Thanks for taking your precious time watching. Please, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, like and comment where you are watching from.